Imagine a tractor so advanced it looked like it belonged on a NASA launch pad. But instead of revolutionizing farming, it vanished into history. From jet engines under the hood to hydrogen fuel cells and even rotary-powered monsters, these machines were decades ahead of their time, but farmers just weren't ready. Today we're digging into 10 tractors that could have changed farming forever but flopped spectacularly. Trust me, number 8 will leave you speechless. Number 1. Allis-Chalmers Fuel-Cell Tractor, 1959. In 1959, Allis-Chalmers unveiled one of the most futuristic experiments in agricultural history. A tractor powered not by gasoline or diesel, but by a hydrogen-oxygen fuel cell. Built on a small D12 chassis, this experimental tractor carried more than 1,000 alkaline fuel cells arranged in banks, producing about 20 horsepower for an electric motor. Instead of pistons and crankshafts, it ran silently on electricity generated through chemical reactions. Its only exhaust was water vapor, a startling contrast to the smoke-belching tractors of the 1950s. For farmers of that era, the machine looked like something out of science fiction. Fuel cells were brand new technology, used only in laboratories and the aerospace sector. The Allis-Chalmers tractor required bulky oxygen and hydrogen tanks, complex wiring, and careful operator control. It was far too delicate and expensive for farm fields that demanded rugged, affordable workhorses. Not surprisingly, it never reached production and was shown only as a concept at trade shows and museums. Yet its importance cannot be understated. Allis-Chalmers fuel cell research influenced later developments in NASA spacecraft, military power units, and eventually modern hydrogen experiments. In many ways, this little tractor was decades ahead of its time, pointing toward a future where agriculture might embrace clean energy. Today, as electric and hydrogen-powered tractors slowly enter the market, the Allis-Chalmers prototype looks less like a gimmick and more like a prophecy. Although it was too advanced and impractical for the 1950s, it proved that farming was not immune to bold leaps in technology. It stands as one of the most ambitious tractor experiments ever attempted. Number 2. Ford Typhoon Gas-Turbine Tractor, 1957. In 1957, Ford engineers pushed the boundaries of possibility with the Typhoon, a tractor powered not by a piston engine, but by a free-piston gas turbine system. At its core, the Typhoon replaced the familiar crankshaft and cylinders with a chamber where fuel and air ignited explosively, driving pistons inward and outward. Instead of turning gears directly, the expanding gases spun a turbine at dizzying speeds, up to 45,000 revolutions per minute, which then transferred power to the wheels. On paper, this made the Typhoon incredibly powerful and smooth-running, with potential to generate more than 100 horsepower. For the 1950s, that was revolutionary. Ford paired this futuristic power plant with another bold technology, an early power shift transmission. The Typhoon used components that would evolve into the Selecto-Speed transmission, one of the first fully shiftable gearboxes without a clutch. Together, the turbine and transmission promised effortless operation compared to the jerky gear-bound tractors farmers were used to. But reality quickly set in. Turbines were expensive to build, difficult to maintain, and notoriously inefficient at the slow, heavy pulling speeds demanded in agriculture. Farmers, accustomed to simple engines they could fix with wrenches, were skeptical of a tractor that looked and sounded like a jet engine. Costs would have been astronomical, and Ford knew the market wasn't ready. Only a handful of prototypes were built before the program was scrapped. Still, the Typhoon was not a wasted effort. The transmission technology was refined and introduced on commercial Ford tractors, and the experiment showed the lengths manufacturers would go to test futuristic concepts. Though it never went into production, the Typhoon remains a remarkable symbol of 1950s innovation, bold, visionary, and simply too advanced for the farming world of its day. Number 3. International Harvester HT340 Hydro Turbine, 1961. By 1961, International Harvester had already built a reputation for bold engineering, but the HT340 concept tractor pushed that image into uncharted territory. Nicknamed the hydro-turbine, this sleek prototype combined a compact gas turbine engine with an infinitely variable hydrostatic transmission. At a time when most tractors were little more than rugged steel frames with diesel engines and gears, the HT340 looked like it belonged in a science museum. Its fiberglass hood was unusually low-slung, offering superb visibility, and its turbine-powered hum was unlike anything farmers had ever heard. The turbine itself was astonishing. Developed by IH's Solar Aircraft subsidiary, it weighed just 60 pounds, but produced around 80 horsepower at an incredible 57,000 RPM. Instead of shifting gears, the hydrostatic drive allowed the operator to change speeds smoothly with a pedal, moving from a crawl to full throttle without ever clutching. This was essentially a forerunner of today's continuously variable transmissions, CVTs. But as with so many futuristic ideas, timing was the problem. Gas turbines guzzled fuel when run at farm speeds, and hydrostatic systems were expensive and still experimental. Farmers facing tight budgets in the early 1960s simply weren't ready for such high-tech machinery. Only 2 units were ever built, and the project was quickly shelved. Yet the HT340 left an important legacy. The knowledge gained helped IH perfect its hydrostatic transmission, which debuted on the Farmall 656 Hydro in 1967, the first production tractor with a true hydro drive. The HT340 may have been too advanced and impractical for its day, but it paved the way for technology that became mainstream decades later. It remains one of the most striking concept tractors ever built. Number 4. John Deere Rotary Wankel Engine Tractor, 1980s. In the 1980s, while the American farm economy struggled through a debt crisis, John Deere was experimenting with one of the boldest engine projects in tractor history, adapting the Wankel rotary engine for farm use. Unlike conventional piston engines, rotary engines used spinning rotors to generate smooth, continuous combustion cycles. Deere engineers were intrigued by the potential advantages: lighter weight, fewer moving parts, and the ability to burn multiple types of fuel. They believed rotary engines could deliver higher power-to-weight ratios, giving tractors greater efficiency and versatility. Deere's rotary program began after it purchased Wankel engine patents from Curtiss-Wright. Over several years, engineers developed and tested multiple rotary designs, including a 2-rotor engine fitted into the chassis of a Deere 2950 tractor. On paper, the machine was compact, powerful, and futuristic. It looked like Deere was on the verge of revolutionizing agricultural engines. But the flaws of rotary technology quickly surfaced. Sealing the engine's combustion chambers proved difficult, leading to leaks and poor durability under the constant stress of farm work. Rotary engines also tended to overheat and burned more fuel than expected, a costly problem during an era when farmers were already squeezed financially. Maintenance required unfamiliar expertise, and dealers doubted customers would embrace such a radical departure from proven diesels. By 1991, Deere officially shut down its rotary division, selling off the research. No rotary-powered tractors ever reached customers. Still, the experiment had value. It advanced Deere's engine modeling capabilities and demonstrated its willingness to think outside convention. While the rotary tractor was too advanced and impractical for its time, it remains one of the most fascinating what-could-have-been chapters in Deere's history. Number 5. Minneapolis-Moline Jetstar Prototype, 1962. In the early 1960s, Minneapolis-Moline was struggling to compete with the bigger names like John Deere and International Harvester. To stand out, they decided to gamble on futuristic technology and began experimenting with a tractor powered by a jet turbine engine. Dubbed the Jetstar Prototype, this machine was unlike anything the farming world had ever seen. Borrowing concepts from aviation, the turbine promised lightweight power and fewer moving parts compared to traditional piston engines. Minneapolis-Moline engineers believed that turbines could deliver the high horsepower farmers increasingly demanded while offering smooth operation and reduced maintenance. The design was eye-catching, with a streamlined body and a stance more reminiscent of experimental vehicles than traditional farm equipment. Operators would have enjoyed the simplicity of throttle control without gears, thanks to the turbine's high-speed capability. In theory, the Jetstar represented a radical leap forward, showing farmers that tomorrow's power might come from technology borrowed from airplanes. But reality quickly undermined the dream. Turbines were notoriously thirsty, guzzling fuel at a rate unsustainable for agricultural economics. At a time when farmers were deeply concerned about operating costs, such inefficiency was a deal-breaker. Additionally, turbines required specialized knowledge to repair, something beyond the scope of local dealers and farm mechanics. The costs of production would have been staggering compared to conventional tractors. Ultimately, only experimental prototypes were built, and the concept was abandoned. Yet the Jetstar showed the same bold vision as Ford's Typhoon and IH's HT340. A willingness to push tractors into a technological future the market simply wasn't ready to accept. Today, it stands as one of the most ambitious and impractical tractors of the 1960s, remembered more as a fascinating experiment than a viable product. Number 6. Case 1470 Traction King. When J.I. Case introduced the 1470 Traction King in 1971, it was pitched as a revolutionary four-wheel drive tractor that could outpull nearly anything else on the market. Unlike articulated competitors such as Steiger or Versatile, the 1470 used a rigid frame with front-wheel steering. This gave it the appearance of a conventional tractor, but with massive power and traction advantages. Powered by a turbocharged diesel engine, the 1470 could deliver over 200 horsepower, an enormous figure for its day. It was aimed squarely at large-scale farms that were beginning to dominate Midwestern agriculture. Case believed this design was the future of big tractors. The rigid frame made it simpler and cheaper than articulated machines, while still offering impressive strength. Its futuristic styling and high cab position also made it stand out on the field. On paper, it looked like a tractor years ahead of its time. But farmers quickly discovered its flaws. The steering system was awkward and prone to mechanical stress, especially under heavy tillage. Because it lacked articulation, the turning radius was terrible, making it clumsy in smaller fields. The drivetrain and final drives also suffered frequent failures when pushed to their limits. For a machine that promised ruggedness, the breakdown rate was far too high. Sales lagged, and Case discontinued the rigid frame four-wheel drive idea after a few years. Ironically, articulated designs from competitors proved far more reliable and went on to dominate the large tractor market. Still, the 1470 demonstrated Case's willingness to experiment with bold engineering. It was too advanced in concept but not refined enough in execution. Today it's remembered as both a curiosity and a stepping stone toward more practical high-horsepower tractors. Number 7. White 421 Sioux Field Boss, 1975. In 1975, White Farm Equipment introduced the 4210 Field Boss, a tractor that looked like it had rolled straight off a sci-fi movie set. With its sharp, boxy design, sloped hood, and massive cab, it stood out dramatically from the rounded conventional tractors of the era. Underneath, it was powered by a hefty 3208 Caterpillar V8 diesel engine producing over 210 horsepower. White marketed it as a sophisticated, high-tech solution for the growing needs of large-scale row crop and grain farmers. The Field Boss wasn't just about power, it was about operator comfort and futuristic design. Its spacious cab offered better visibility, climate control options, and a more car-like driving experience than most tractors of the 1970s. The styling was years ahead of competitors, foreshadowing the squared-off designs that would dominate tractors in the 1980s and beyond. White wanted the 4210 to symbolize modern farming, powerful, efficient, and technologically progressive. But as with many machines ahead of their time, the execution wasn't perfect. The Caterpillar 3208 engine, while powerful, developed a reputation for durability issues under the heavy, continuous loads of farming. Some farmers complained about reliability and high maintenance costs. The tractor's futuristic styling also came at a time when many conservative farmers preferred machines that looked and felt familiar. Add in the fact that White was facing serious financial troubles during the 1970s, and the Field Boss never reached the sales numbers it deserved. Nevertheless, the 420 was a pioneer. Its cab design and styling influenced later tractors, and collectors today see it as a bold experiment that pointed toward the future. Though too advanced for most farmers of its day, the Field Boss remains one of the most iconic tractors White ever produced. Number 8. Steiger Series 1, 1969. By the late 1960s, farming in the US was undergoing dramatic change. Fields were getting larger, implements wider, and the demand for high-horsepower tractors was skyrocketing. Enter the Steiger Series 1, a revolutionary machine that took a completely different approach to tractor design. Instead of using the conventional rigid chassis, the Series 1 was fully articulated, bending at the middle like a hinge to provide unmatched maneuverability for a massive four-wheel drive tractor. This concept, while common today, was far ahead of its time in The Series I wasn't just big, it was huge for the era, with engines ranging from 200 to 300 horsepower. Built in a small shop in North Dakota, these tractors were literally handcrafted by the Steiger brothers, who had been experimenting with home-built articulated tractors since the 1950s. The Series 1 proved that articulation was the future of large-scale agriculture, offering tight turning, even weight distribution, and power that could handle the largest implements of the day. Yet despite its brilliance, the Series 1 was too advanced for many farmers. The sheer size intimidated smaller operations, and the price was steep at a time when most farms were still family-run with modest acreage. Maintenance could also be tricky, as parts weren't always readily available and the unique articulation required specialized understanding. Even so, the Steiger Series I left a lasting impact. Though it wasn't a mainstream hit in its time, it laid the foundation for the articulated four-wheel drive tractors that dominate today's high-horsepower market. Farmers eventually came to accept what the Steigers pioneered, but in 1969 the Series 1 was simply too far ahead of its time for widespread adoption. Number 9. Versatile 145 won 1970. In 1970, Versatile, a Canadian company making waves in North America, introduced the 145, a machine that blurred the line between conventional tractors and futuristic giants. The 145 delivered 145 horsepower and was one of the first affordable articulated four-wheel drive tractors marketed directly to large-scale U.S. farmers. While Steiger was building custom giants, Versatile tried to bring articulation into the mainstream with a practical mass-produced model. The 145 was compact compared to later articulated machines, but it was still radical for its time. Its articulation meant farmers could pull larger implements and cover more ground with less soil compaction compared to rigid-frame tractors. Its no-frills design made it more accessible than the experimental giants of the 1960s, but it still carried a futuristic aura in an industry where many operators were just upgrading from 70-100 horsepower tractors. Despite its practicality, the Versatile 145 was ahead of its time. Many U.S. farmers in 1970 weren't ready for articulation. They preferred the simplicity of row crop tractors and worried about the learning curve of operating such a large machine. Parts support and servicing were also limited, as Versatile lacked the dealer networks of giants like Deere or IH. Sales were modest, but the 145 paved the way for Versatile's future dominance in the four-wheel drive market. Within a decade, Versatile became a respected name in big tractors, and articulated machines were no longer viewed as oddities. The 145 wasn't a failure, but it was underappreciated in its own time, a machine that proved the future of farming before farmers were fully ready to embrace it. Number 10. Massey Ferguson 1500 Series, 1978. By the late 1970s, Massey Ferguson wanted to break into the high-horsepower tractor market in North America. The result was the 1500 series, introduced in 1978. These massive tractors, such as the MF 1505 and 1500, packed Detroit diesel V8 engines delivering up to 270 horsepower. Their sheer size, modern design, and advanced engineering placed them among the most ambitious tractors of their time. The 1500 series was built to tackle the growing demand for large acreage farming. With articulated frames, heavy-duty axles, and powerful engines, they could handle massive implements that smaller tractors simply couldn't. Massey Ferguson marketed them as the future of farming machines that could replace multiple smaller tractors and dramatically boost efficiency. However, the tractors quickly revealed challenges. The Detroit diesel engines, while powerful, had reliability problems under long, heavy loads. Fuel consumption was high, a major drawback during a time of rising fuel costs. Farmers also complained about the complexity of maintenance, as servicing a big V8 was far more demanding than a conventional inline diesel. Combined with Massey Ferguson's financial struggles in the late 1970s, the tractors never gained the traction the company hoped for. Still, the 1500 series deserves recognition as one of the boldest attempts to push farming technology forward. It anticipated the shift toward mega-horsepower tractors that would dominate the 1980s and beyond. Unfortunately, it was a step too early, too complex, and introduced during a difficult economic climate for farmers. The 1500 series was too advanced for its time, but it helped shape the trajectory of big tractor development in North America. So there you have it, 10 tractors that were simply too advanced for their own good. Some were brilliant, some were bizarre, and all of them proved that pushing the limits of innovation doesn't always guarantee success. But every failure left behind lessons that shape the tractors we use today. Which of these machines do you think deserved a second chance? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into farming history and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, keep those engines running.